The topic to be discussed in this video is Chapter 8 of the Government Accounting Manual for NGAS entitled Inventories. For the scope of the chapter, it covers the definition, recognition, measurement, cost formulas to be used, and related disclosure requirement in accordance with PPSAS 12 on inventories. It also includes specific guidelines and procedures on acquisition, issue, disposal, and impairment of inventory, and defines the benchmark for those tangible items not enough to be considered as property, plant, and equipment. So basically, this chapter deals with the inventory, on how to recognize, on what amount to recognize, and what are the formulas or cost formulas to be used in disclosing it in our financial statements. To understand better the chapter, here are the terminologies that we need to define first. Some or most of the terminologies here are already familiar to us because it is the same terminologies that are being used in the inventory discussion of our commercial business. So first, let's have our current replacement cost. So of course, when we say current replacement cost, it pertains to the cost of the entity or the cost the entity would incur to acquire the asset on the reporting date. So this is the acquisition amount, acquisition cost on the reporting date. The fair value, on the other hand, is the amount for which the same inventory could be exchanged between knowledgeable and willing buyers and sellers in the marketplace. So it is the amount commonly referred to before in an arm's length transaction. A willing buyer and a willing seller would sell the price where the willing buyer and a willing seller would agree. Inventories are assets in the form of materials or supplies to be consumed. Examples are materials and supplies for waiting to be used in the production process. It also includes form of materials or supplies to be consumed in rendering of services, examples of which are office supplies, ammunitions, maintenance materials. Can also be those assets that are held for sale or distribution in the ordinary course of operations. Examples are merchandise being purchased by an entity and held for resale. Can also be in the process of production for sale or distribution, or what is commonly known as the goods still in process. We also have net realizable value. So it is the estimated selling price in the ordinary course of operations minus or less the estimated cost of completion and estimated cost necessary to make the sale, exchange, or distribution. That is why it is considered as net realizable value, because it includes the selling price and deducting all the expenses or costs that would be incurred prior to selling, which includes completion as well as selling cost. Next terminology is perpetual inventory system. So this is a system that continually tracks all additions to and deletions from inventory. So under the perpetual system, all movements of the inventory, the inflow and the outflow of inventory will be recorded. Section 3 of the chapter is about the cost of inventory. So again, this is not a new concept, because because the things that we had discussed in accounting standards for commercial business is also applicable for government. So when we say cost of inventories, it pertains to all cost of purchase, or if we are manufacturing or producing it, it includes cost of conversion, considering all the elements of manufacturing, and other costs incurred in bringing the inventories to their present location and condition. Please also take note that the abnormal amounts of wasted materials, labor, and other production and selling costs, administrative overhead that do not contribute to bringing inventories at their present location are not included as part of the cost of inventories. With regard to trade discounts, rebates, and other similar items, it is accounted for as a reduction in the determination of the cost of purchase. Oh, let me clear that. That is deducted in determining the cost of purchase, meaning that is not accounted in the books. Section 4 is about measurement. So after identifying that it is qualified for recognition, the next question is how much are we going to measure it? So generally speaking, the measurement is at the lower of cost and net realizable value. But if the inventories acquired or if the inventories are acquired through a non-exchange transaction, meaning the inventories ay nakuha mo without you giving anything. Okay, non-exchange transaction. The valuation or the measurement is fair value as at the date of acquisition. For held for distribution at no charge or for a nominal charge, or for consumption in the production process of goods to be distributed at no charge or for a nominal charge, the measurement is at the lower of cost and current replacement cost. So kanina naman, we were able to define what current replacement cost is. And if we're talking about inventories comprising agricultural produce, so same as that of a government or commercial business, you'll be measuring it at the fair value less cost to sell at the point of harvest. For Section 5, the cost formulas that we're going to use in government accounting is a specific identification or weighted average cost formula. So when are we going to use the specific identification? If the items that we have are not ordinarily interchangeable, goods or services produced and segregated for specific projects. Other than that, if the items are interchangeable items, then we will be using the weighted average cost formula. So we have also basic idea about this too. Section 6 is about the weighted average method. So it's not a simple average method na pinagsasama-sama lang natin yung cost at i-divide natin sa quantity. So since it is weighted average, so from time to time, when there is a change in the cost as well as in the total cost as well as in the total quantity, nagkakaroon tayo ng computation ng running balance, or should I say running weighted average unit cost. So as you can see in the example provided here, this is a supplies ledger card. We started with the beginning balance. So this is the total cost. Also the unit cost and the number of quantity. And then portion of this, since we're following the perpetual, in this case, perpetual system, any movement, inflow and outflow of inventories are being recorded. So these are the portion for the receipt and these are the portion for the issuance. So the number of quantity is changing depending on the movement of the inventory, and so the total cost is also changing the same with the unit cost. For the recognition as an expense, so of course we know that inventory is classified as an asset of the government. Then the question is when are we going to recognize an expense related to the inventories that we have? So when the inventories are sold, exchanged, or distributed, so basically that is when you are going to recognize inventory as an expense. Um, when they are being sold, exchanged, or distributed, kailan natin siya i-recognize as an expense in the period in which the related revenue is recognized. Right? So that's basic concept about the recognition of expense. However, if there is no related revenue, so it's possible that our inventories ay mawawala sa atin pero wala tayong revenue na ma-recognize, then kailan natin siya i-recognize as an expense? When the goods are distributed or the related service is rendered. Okay? So basically, ang sinasabi lang dito sa first part, in the recognition as an expense, the situation is either you earn a revenue or not. So if you earn the revenue, same period mo siya i-recognize as an expense. Pero kung wala kang na-earn na revenue, dun tayo, ang i-consider natin na period ay kung kailan siya na-distribute or kailan na-render yung service. Aside from that, aside from the selling, exchange, or distribution of the inventory, we can also, or we are to recognize expense also when the amount of any write down to not realizable value and all losses of inventories occurred. So what does it mean? Writing down to the not realizable value. So if you will recall in the measurement, the lower of cost or not realizable value. So in the case or in the situation where the realizable value is lower than the cost, then we have to write it down to the NRV. And writing it down meaning, for example, the cost of the inventory that is recorded in our books is 7,000. And its net realizable value, let us say, is 5,000. So you have to write it down from 7,000 in the books, gagawin natin siyang 5,000. And how are you going to do that? There is a 2,000 peso difference. So we have to write it down. So kailan natin siya i-recognize na loss? So in the period, the write down or the loss occurs. Now, there could be a possibility that there is a reversal of write down of inventories. So kailan naman nangyayari yun? So in the example that we have, or in the example that I have given you, so 7,000 is the original cost. At the end of the period, it became 5,000, or the net realizable value became 5,000. So we have to write down the 2,000 difference. Now, come the following accounting period, the net realizable value become, let us say, 6,000. So in that case, it's still lower than the cost because the cost is 7,000. So still 6,000 pa rin yung ating i-recognize as the net realizable value. Therefore, yun yung amount na ipapresent natin. But remember, nagmula na siya sa 5,000. No, nagmula na siya sa 5,000. Na-record na siya or na-report na siya as 5,000 the previous year. So, yung 1,000 na increase from 5,000 to 6,000, we cannot consider that as a gain. Okay? But instead, or should I say, we cannot consider that as an income kasi hindi naman income talaga yon, but instead, a reversal of the previously written down because of what happened in the prior period. No, so mangyayari doon, reversal lang yon ng write down. Kailan siya i-recognize? At the period in which the reversal occurs. Okay. What else? Section 8, talking about the impairment. So an asset is said to be impaired if the cost of the inventory held for sale is higher than the net realizable value, or the cost of inventories held for distribution or consumption is higher than the replacement cost, current replacement cost. So please take note, magkaiba yung ginagamit natin kasi kanina napag-usapan natin yung measurement ng inventory natin. Well, nakadepende kung anong klase ng asset or anong klase ng inventory ang pinag-uusapan. So the difference between the cost and the net realizable value or the current replacement cost will be recognized as an expense in the financial statement. So this is consistent with what I had discussed in the previous slide. For Section 9, Perpetual Inventory Method, so this system requires accounting records showing the amount of inventory on hand at all times through the maintenance of the SLC, yung pinakita natin kanina na, or should I say SLC represents the supplies ledger card maintained by the accounting division, and the stock card, ito pala yung nakita natin kanina, maintained by the supply or property division. Please also take note that supplies and materials purchased out of PCF for immediate use or on emergency cases are charged directly to the appropriate expense account. So pinag-usapan naman natin kanina yan in the discussion, or it is included in the discussion of petty cash in financial instrument. What else? Section 10, Semi-expendable Property. So this is a new concept in government accounting. I mean, new concept because it is not present in the commercial accounting or in business accounting. So ano yung tinatawag na semi-expendable property? So technically, or by form, you can consider it as a property. Okay? And property, alam natin, in commercial accounting, meron niyang sariling account na ginagamit. But for government accounting, meron tayong tinatawag na semi-expendable property. At this semi-expendable property, although by form, it is property. But in accounting, for government, it is to be accounted for as part of inventory. So, ano itong tinatawag na expendable property? These are tangible items below the capitalization threshold of 15,000. Okay? The item might be used for more than 1 year, but its value hindi umabot dun sa capitalization threshold of 15,000. So, ibig sabihin, hindi siya mai-record as capital outlay. Okay? So, what are the policies that we need to apply in semi-expandable property? So, the property recognized, which were recognized as PPE, shall be reclassified to the affected accounts. These tangible items shall be recognized as expenses upon issue to the end user. Kaya siya tinawag na semi-expendable property. For Section 11, accountability over semi-expendable property. So, sino po ang accountable diyan? Inventory custodian slip shall be issued to end user of semi-expendable property to establish accountability over them. So, syempre, ang accountable dyan ay user, end user nung property. No? So, sino ba yung end user usually dyan? Di yung mga nag-request nung property. So, meron tayong form, ICS, Appendix 59 ng ating BAM, no? So, that is one of the accountable forms na ginagamit in the accounting for semi-expendable property. Accountability shall be extinguished upon return of the item to the property and supply division, or in case of loss, upon approval of the relief from property accountability. Okay, what else? Section 12, pertaining to the disclosure and presentation. So, in financial statements, ano ba yung mga kailangan nating i-disclose? So first, the accounting policy that we adopt in measuring the inventories, including the cost formula. Gumamit ba tayo ng specific identification or ng weighted average method? Of course, yung mga carrying amounts. No, carrying amounts ng inventories depending on the inventory classification. Kung yan ay yung held for sale, kung yan yung held for consumption, okay? Kung yan by biological produce. So, yun po, yung carrying amount. Also, included natin din sa disclosure and presentation natin yung ni-recognize as expense, yung mga write-down, yung mga reversal ng write-down, and the reason leading to the reversal of the write-down, as well as the carrying amount ng inventories being pledged as security for liabilities. So, dito, meron tayo, alam naman natin yung konsepto ng pledging. No? So, we have our assets na pinipledge natin for the liabilities. Parang as if we are telling the creditor na just in case we were not able to pay the liabilities that we have, then they can run after our specific or they can run after the inventories that we have. Section 13, Inventory Accounting System. So, the system consists of a system of monitoring, of controlling, and recording, both the acquisition as well as the disposal of the inventory. Ang mga steps or activities involved in the inventory accounting system, so it will start with the receipt of the purchased inventory items. So, yung listahan ng mga inventory na na-purchase. And then, yung requesting office na nangangailangan ng inventory items, if they found out na wala or if the property and the supply division identified or determined na yung items na kailangan ng requesting office are not available in the stock, walang stock nung items na kailangan, then the requesting office shall prepare and cause the approval of the purchase request. No? So, may purchase request. And then, the agency shall issue a duly approved contract or purchase order. So, syempre, kailangan mo na may request bago magkaroon ng purchase order. Pero bago mag-request, kailangan mo nang malaman na wala doon sa existing stock yung kailangan na item. And then, physical count or inventory is required semi-annually. So, this procedure is intended to check the integrity of the property custodianship. For Section 14, Inventory Accounting Subsystems. So, dito naman po, ano-ano yung mga systems within the General Inventory Accounting System. So, talking about the receipt, inspection, acceptance, and recording of deliveries of inventory items. So, this will be the focus of our discussion in the next slides. Other than that, we also have requisition, then issue of inventory items, and then transfer or disposal of inventory items. For Section 15, ito yung procedures in relation to receipt, inspection, and acceptance, as well as recording deliveries of inventory items. So, the supply officer signs receipt portion of the delivery receipt and prepares IAR. Ano ba yung IAR? Inspection and acceptance report. And then the property inspector inspects and verifies yung na-receive. And then supply officer acknowledge the receipt noong inventory items, of course, since sila naman yung may custody doon sa mga items na nare-receive. Then the accounting department or accounting division, of course, they will be preparing the journal entry voucher since nasa recording naman sila ngayon. Okay, recording part naman na yun. And then, supply officer will prepare the disbursement voucher and the SLC. So, ano yung SLC? Supplies Ledger card keeper will post necessary information to the SLC. What else? So, ito yung receipt, inspection, acceptance, and recording of deliveries yung nasa baba. Section 17. So, ito yung mga forms po na minamaintain at piniprepare related to inventory. So, yeah, here are some of the forms. So, sa GAM, meron naman po ang manual ng template niyan. Okay. So, stock card. So, ginagamit yan to record the receipts and issues of supplies. Sino nagme-maintain ng stock card? Yung property or supply division. Si supplies ledger card, same idea. So, receipt and issuance ng materials, no? Ito naman, mine-maintain naman po ng accounting unit. Next is the requisition and issue slip. So, ginagamit ko ng end user, yung magre-request, and also ng property or supply division. Yung purchase request, si end user din yan, sa requesting unit yan. As mentioned in our previous discussion, ayan po ay ginagamit in the preparation of PO or purchase order. Yung purchase order, sino nagpa-purchase? Si property or supply custodian. Ini-issue yan, of course, sa mga suppliers. Report of supplies and materials issued. So, si property custodian po ang nagpre-prepare niyan. Ang ibig sabihin niyan yan yung mga in-issue na doon sa mga requesting unit. Okay. And then waste materials report, si property din po yan ang nagpre-prepare niyan. So, it includes it is the report showing the waste materials. So, report on the physical count of inventories. So, sabi nga kanina, physical count of inventories are being done semi-annually. Yung atin pong physical count is ginagamit to identify baka meron tayong shortage or overage. What else? Yun. We also have the inspection and acceptance report. So, na-mention ito kanina doon sa receipts inspection of the inventory. We also have report of accountability for accountable forms. So, it must be prepared by the accountable officer to report the movement and status of the accountable forms. So, and then inventory custodians prepared upon issue of a semi-expendable property covered by the approved requisition and issue slip. So, yun po yung mga forms na or forms and reports related to our inventory. I guess this is the last slide for this video discussion. If you have any questions, you can comment your questions and we'll try to answer that when we meet in a synchronous session.